What is Ronald Reagan's legacy to America? What is his legacy to America?
I think it's uniting American citizens, of the love for country, the uniting of all of us together, wanting to be a better country, a better people. And I saw that in every walk of his life, both when we were in Washington and when he came back in 1990 to speak at BYU, and the way he united the students, and they were glad to be Americans. And along with that, I saw in a very closed unit, as he came to speak to BYU, we had a little time with him, probably about 40 minutes in a room before he went out to speak to the student body. He could so easily have said, I need this time to myself. He spent time with every one of my children. And my youngest child had just been elected student body president of her elementary school, a 6th grader. And he sat down on a chair and he talked to her about, that's how he began in politics in elementary school. And then he talked to her about what it meant to be a good leader and a good American. And I loved that about him. That was his legacy to my family, and that's the legacy that I saw that he left with the BYU student body and our country.
You know, as you look at the presidents of the United States, what they've done, you look back as far as Lincoln, another one that we hold in very high esteem, a great emancipator. You look at FDR, maybe you don't agree with his politics, but we'll always remember what happened during that Depression, and he will always stand out to a lot of people. And I think you put your finger on Ronald Reagan, though. He made us proud that we're an American. You know, even I remember the first thing they had was that song they sang, I'm proud to be an American. I remember when he stood up in Salt Lake and said, I'm a sagebrush rebel. Boy, everyone there, yay, that's wonderful. And he joined right in with us. So he became one of, every group he went to, they went out saying, he's our guy. He's our kind of guy. We love this guy. And that could be a labor union, that could be a group of CEOs, it could be anything. They just seemed to love Ronald Reagan. He just had the ability to do that. So you start ticking off presidents all the way back as far as you can remember, or whatever you've heard in history. I think he stands out as one of the top 3 or 4 that we've had in this country.
One of the instances where he really was able to project the American ideal was in this fabulous speech he gave at Moscow State University in 1988. And to me, I've often used this in teaching to show how crystallized his vision of freedom was. He was able to go outside the United States and project this powerful vision for American freedom, and was unafraid in any circumstance to stand up for freedom. Not only, it wasn't just a catchphrase with him. He really embraced the challenges of freedom. He knew that it was less orderly than having other kinds of systems in place. He knew that it didn't guarantee anything for Americans, but that it presented tremendous opportunity. And I thought he was such a powerful defender of that kind of American freedom. And the lasting impact that it's had, I think, has been seen in some of the policies where he was able to empower entrepreneurs to reach out beyond the old model of large corporations, large unions, and really put into place a vision for entrepreneurs to make the most of the freedom that America provided them. So through policies at OMB, reviewing regulatory initiatives for cost-benefit analysis, or through his judicial appointments, which he had more of than any other American president, we have this lasting legacy of people being able to embrace the economic and other kinds of freedoms that America affords, and he was the best defender of freedom.
And I recall very vividly in the White House in those days when he announced this as one of his first initiatives. He indicated that he would have a bipartisan group. I think there were 17 of you with 1+ on the Republican side. When he took this position, it wasn't just a political platitude. It was a focus. It was the same one he ended with, and the same one for which he got a lot of credit beyond when the wall came down. And I recall when he took over the presidency in this hemisphere alone, there were some 73% of these peoples, our peoples, living under some form of democratic rule. And when he left office 8 years later, it was 98%.
His personal integrity and honesty. Forget the issues, forget what he accomplished. Just so amazing to me with all the big heads in Washington, D.C., that you have a President of the United States who was so down to earth, so direct. You ask him a question, you got a straight answer. And he didn't have the big ego where if he didn't know about something, he was absolutely willing, as I mentioned about space, to call and ask. And that's so unusual when you're a President of the United States to admit that you're not perfect and don't know everything about everything.
In 1973, he had proposed to the legislature an amendment to the California Constitution that would not have allowed the state to spend more money than a given percentage of the gross annual product in the state, so that the state could not get into the mess it's in now. Unfortunately, others advised him that he should go ahead and call a special election in November of '73 for this proposal, because the legislature wouldn't pass it. It was defeated by the opposition, mostly the labor unions and the state employees. After it was defeated, I asked him, do you want to try again? And he said, no. He said, I really would like this to have been my legacy for the state of California. If that had been passed, California today would not be in the disastrous situation it's in financially. The state is bankrupt. California is, if it were a corporation, would be an involuntary bankruptcy. If Reagan's proposal in 1973 had been adopted, the state could have done everything it had to do, but would now have a sound credit rating instead of a 0 credit rating, and would not have been in the disastrous situation it is.
This is a land better than all others in the world, more freedom, more opportunity. And he believed that the Constitution was inspired by God, and he felt that he had a mission in his role to preserve it. I mean, he was that clear about it. And I think that's what motivated him in all things that he did.